But here is the uncomfortable truth: studying harder does not always mean learning better. Sometimes the harder you push, the more invisible mistakes you create. Welcome back to Learn with Leo. Today we are exposing your learning blind spots. These are the hidden habits that make you work hard, yet stay stuck. You may spend hours reading, highlighting, and rewriting notes. Then, when the test arrives, the information suddenly disappears. That does not automatically mean you are lazy or unintelligent. It may mean your learning system is working against you. High grades are not produced by raw intelligence alone. They depend on what you already know, remember, and do with information. Think of learning like building a house, not collecting bricks. A pile of facts is useless if you cannot connect them. And knowing something is different from using it wisely. That difference appears everywhere, from classrooms to boardrooms. A student may memorize formulas but freeze when the problem changes. An employee may know the process but miss the bigger decision. The missing skill is often not effort, it is transfer. Transfer means taking knowledge from one situation and applying it to another. This is why smart decisions require more than a good memory. They require context, judgment, and emotional control. Under pressure, even familiar information can become difficult to access. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman called this the difference between fast and slow thinking. Fast thinking is useful, but it can also rely on shortcuts. Those shortcuts can create confident answers that are completely wrong. The first blind spot is mistaking familiarity for understanding. When a page looks familiar, your brain may assume the lesson is learned. But recognition is not the same as retrieval. If you cannot explain the idea without looking, the gap is still there. So before blaming your intelligence, inspect your method. Because the right method can turn effort into real progress. In the next section, we will redefine what learning actually is. That door opens onto a crucial idea: learning is not collecting information. It is the process of rebuilding information inside your own mind. Reading a chapter gives your brain an input. But input alone does not guarantee understanding. Watching a lecture is another input, not the finished product. Even beautiful notes can hide a weak learning process. The real work begins when you interact with the idea. Ask what the idea means, why it matters, and where it applies. This is why active questioning beats passive highlighting. Psychologist Jan Piaget described learning as adaptation. New knowledge must connect with the models you already have. Sometimes that connection feels uncomfortable at first. That discomfort is not always a sign you are failing. Often, it signals that your mental model is being updated. Think of learning to drive on the streets of London or New York. Knowing traffic rules is useful, but applying them is learning. Your brain changes most when it has to make decisions. It also changes when you make a mistake and inspect it. A mistake gives you evidence about what needs rebuilding. That is productive friction, enough challenge to force deeper thinking. Too little friction creates familiarity, not mastery. Too much friction creates overwhelm and shutdown. The goal is the challenging middle ground. A deeper learner is comfortable saying, "I do not understand this yet." That sentence opens the door to better questions. Instead of asking, "Why am I bad at this?" ask, "Which part of this process is unclear?" That shift turns self-criticism into investigation. And investigation is where usable knowledge begins. Because the final test is not recognition, it is transfer. Can you use the idea in a new situation? Can you explain it, challenge it, and connect it? If yes, information has become a changed perspective. You are no longer seeing just facts, you are seeing patterns, risks, and possibilities. But recognizing the pattern is only the beginning. Now we face the first blind spot: studying more while remembering less. You can spend an entire Saturday with your textbook open and still remember surprisingly little on Monday. The problem is not always motivation. Sometimes the learning process itself is working against you. Repeated reading feels productive because the words begin to look familiar. But familiarity is not the same as being able to explain the idea without help. This is why highlighting every sentence can create an illusion of competence. Your brain may recognize the answer without knowing how to produce it. Memory becomes stronger when information has structure, meaning, and connections. Think of facts as points on a map. Without roads between them, they are difficult to reach. A mind map builds those roads by placing one central idea at the center. From there, branch into the key principles that explain it. Then add examples, details, and links to what you already know. For example, learning supply and demand becomes easier when connected to everyday life. A crowded concert, a limited product, or rising rent suddenly makes the concept concrete. This principle also appears in psychology research on the testing effect. Researchers Roediger and Karpik found that retrieving information can strengthen memory more than simply rereading it. That means the blank page is not your enemy. It is a training tool. After reading a chapter, close the book and write everything you can remember. Do not check the answer immediately. Give your brain a chance to search. That mental search is where the memory pathway gets stronger. You can explain the concept aloud, as if teaching a friend over coffee. If your explanation becomes vague, you have found the exact place to study next. The next blind spot is cramming everything into one heroic study marathon. The forgetting curve associated with Hermann Ebbinghaus shows how quickly unused information fades. Spaced learning works because each review interrupts that fading process. Instead of one 4-hour session, use several shorter sessions across the week. Each return to the material becomes a fresh retrieval opportunity. But memory does not grow through study alone. Your brain also needs sleep. During sleep, important information is consolidated while unnecessary noise is reduced. Intentional breaks help too, especially after demanding mental work. So measure learning by what you can reconstruct, not by how long you sat there. But the same principle applies to effort. More is not always better. Sometimes trying harder pushes your brain past its useful limit. Academic stress can activate the same fight or flight system designed for danger. Your brain may treat a difficult exam like a physical threat. That is why your heart races, your attention narrows, and simple questions suddenly feel impossible. Psychologist Yerkes and Dodson described this pattern over a century ago. A little pressure can sharpen performance, but too much pressure makes it collapse. Think of it like a phone battery. Useful energy eventually becomes overheating. The first hours of focused study usually create the biggest gains. After that, each extra hour may produce less progress. Eventually, effort can become counterproductive. You may reread the same paragraph without actually understanding it. You may repeat the same mistake while feeling increasingly frustrated. That does not automatically mean you are lazy or incapable. It may simply mean your working memory is overloaded. Working memory is the mental workspace you use to hold and manipulate information. When that workspace fills up, clarity disappears first. So before forcing another chapter, check whether you are actually learning. Can you explain the idea without looking? Can you solve one example correctly? If not, continuing may only deepen the confusion. The smarter move is often a short reset. Take 10 to 15 minutes away from the material. Walk, drink water, and let your nervous system settle. Slow breathing can help shift you from survival mode back into learning mode. Try breathing in for 4 counts and out for 6. Then return with one smaller, clearer target. For example, study for 25 minutes, then pause briefly. At the stopping point, inspect your errors instead of judging yourself. Replace "I'm stupid" with "which step is confusing me?" That shift turns shame into a solvable problem. And when anxiety or fatigue appears, acknowledge it instead of fighting it. You are not the feeling. You are the person noticing it. And that distance gives you a choice. Change the way you learn. First, stop measuring learning by hours alone. A long study session can still produce shallow understanding. Instead, ask, can I explain this without looking? That question turns studying into active reconstruction. Build knowledge with structure, not scattered information. Start with one central idea, then connect everything around it. Use spaced repetition instead of one night cramming. Revisit the material before it completely disappears. Then close the notes and retrieve what remains. Active recall feels harder, but that difficulty is useful. Psychologist Robert Jork called this desirable difficulty. The struggle is not always a warning sign. Sometimes it is the signal that memory is strengthening, but effort must be balanced with recovery. Rest is not the enemy of achievement. Sleep helps the brain consolidate what you practiced. So when your focus collapses, do not automatically blame your character. Check the process before judging your intelligence. Ask which step confused you and what evidence you missed. That is a growth mindset in action. Carol Dweck's research makes the distinction clear. Your method can improve, even when today's result is disappointing. Treat mistakes as data, not as a verdict. A simple weekly review can reveal your blind spots. Which topics did you avoid? Which strategy actually helped? Small adjustments compound into major improvements. So remember, learning is a system, not a personality test. Recognizing a blind spot is not failure. It is the starting point for better decisions and better learning. Which learning blind spot are you working on right now? Share it in the comments and subscribe to Learn with Leo for more psychology-based tools.